Hello, everyone. Dale King here, your host here on Syndicate Media. And today we're speaking with the entrepreneur known as the CEO who sleeps with bears, Frank Nichols. He is the founder and CEO of Silicon Forest with 50 years in aviation and military products. We're going to unpack his wealth of insight on leadership and entrepreneurship and how it all connects to sleeping with bears. I am happy to introduce you to a colleague and longtime friend of mine, Frank Nichols. Frank is known for being the CEO that sleeps with the bears. He's got a remarkable leadership style, and we're going to be talking about leadership ideas and his experiences and the research that Frank has done around leadership. And he's always a student, always learning. Good morning, Frank.
Good morning, Dale. How are we doing today?
We are doing well. We've been talking about your leadership work for some time. And how do you relate your passion for photographing bears with your leadership?
That's an interesting question. Well, it kind of has to start with a story that was, I guess I was about 10, 11 years old. And my dad, he was a hunter, and he hunted and fished, and that was his passion and pastime. And of course, everybody has their magazines lying around the house. And I don't remember if it was an Argosy magazine or an Outdoor Life magazine. But within that were lots of stories about people who were exploring the world and wandering off to exotic places like Africa and Alaska. Alaska at that point in time, that was a long time ago before it was even a state. It was one of those exotic places. And one particular article had this gentleman was hunting the great brown bears of Alaska with a bow and arrow. And that was again before compound bows. And so this is a little bit of a dangerous situation, but I was really intrigued with that whole process of being out in the wilderness and it created an explorer nature in me. And I really had a passion for wanting to go to Alaska, wanted to see the bears. As I went on through college, I developed another passion. I guess with me, I had developed different kinds of passions all along, but this one was around photography. And so the combination of photography and the bears gave me the opportunity to finally go to Alaska and spend some time in Alaska and start photographing and learning how to photograph nature, wild animals, and the bears. So that's kind of the whole start of who I am as a very young person. I obviously went on to college, and maybe it wasn't obvious, but I went on to college, got an engineering degree, and then some 12 or so years into my career, I had an opportunity to do a presentation and a comparison between Dr. Duran, Dr. Deming, and the book Tom Peters wrote, In Search of Excellence.
Right.
And it created another kind of a passion for me. And that was that In Search of Excellence was all about in search of excellence in leadership. And so leadership became a study of mine. So between the travel, the exploring the world, the bears, and this leadership passion, that kind of puts a circle around much of what I've done in my life in terms of trying to bring it all together. Those were some of my passions.
Let's well, and that's when you're talking about passions, that's what really brings us to the topic of today. Of really, you got to want to do it. If you're going to be a leader, you got to want to do what you're digging into there. And sometimes I know in our conversations, especially, is I've heard you talk about things where it was clearly connected to your leadership style, and things like what you're talking about, the photography and even going after the bears and getting into engineering, and all these things start with that one very interesting trait, and that's desire, that's passion.
Absolutely. Passion is the key to, I think, the key to any excellence. If you're going to be excellent at any particular subject, you have to be passionate about it. Your whole process of thinking literally has to be, every moment of your day is around, how do I get better at whatever that passion might be. So passion is really the key element of, you gotta wanna. And something that I've titled in my presentation is, you gotta want to be a leader. And so
Right.
you've got to want to educate yourself, and you've got to want to help others, because the difference between, let's back up a second and define leadership. And I have pulled out a definition this morning, and then I added to it. I'm going to read it to you here just to be sure I get it correct. It says, the ability of an individual or group to influence and guide others, such as followers, members of an organization, society, or a team. And that's where they stopped. And that may be leadership, or leadership as it was defined by that particular dictionary. But a great leader is one that brings passion into their leadership, and does it because they want to bring others along to succeed. And that's
Mm.
the essence of what I've termed authentic,
Right.
adaptable leadership.
Oh,
And
that's
that
good.
is being sure that you're always putting yourself as support of others as a leader, rather than the leader and everybody supporting you. In fact, our organization was treated much like an upside down pyramid, where the CEO was at the bottom of the bottom rung of the ladder, and all of those people within the organization are those people that I would
Right.
support. And then the pyramid tips the other direction whenever it starts to look at the customers, and we're all there supporting the customers and their organization. So it basically becomes two pyramids pointed at each other, looking in either direction. So,
Right. Right. I keep thinking about, the technical training you did, engineering, even consulting, being inside large organizations, small organizations, and all of that career. But this leadership piece is really intriguing, because you didn't take your engineering into starting your business some 20 some years ago. You took your leadership in engineering into starting a company. And I think that's what's intrigued me, to see you not stay on the shop floor and just keep building things yourself, but to actually begin to create a space for others, and then to bring others into it, and then give them a space to grow as people.
there's an element of knowledge required about whatever your shop floor happens to be.
Right.
In my case, it was building electronics, and I needed to have some fundamental understanding of what that electronics assembly would look like. In addition, how the machines are going to work. So there's a fundamental need for some knowledge and that technical ability. And then there's the need to be able to lead people in the process.
Right.
And the differentiator is whenever you can lead people into that process, so that they are not performing for you, but they're performing and improving for themselves,
Right.
and creating that culture of support, as opposed to driving it from a manager level and from a top down look down level, is a significant difference in how I look at my leadership.
There's a thought out there that people are born leaders. I heard people recently saying they're a born salesperson. And the things going through my mind is like, you actually learn these things. You you may have a natural tendency, but still, I think Strength Finders showed us that you really have to add education and experience to any tendencies toward a strength, a personality strength. So obviously, leaders are born, or are they made?
Well, definitely, you have certain pieces that will enhance your leadership ability that you're born with. If
Right.
you're an extroverted person, you might be an easier transition to having some of the communication requirements with people. But for the most part, all of those things that make a great leader are teachable, and if you're willing, you can learn them.
Right.
They're not there's not something that you typically would learn from reading the book. It takes a lot of practice. For instance, one of the items on my list that's at the top is the lead by example. uh, Leading by example literally takes you to having to get down and be able to roll your sleeves up. And if you're not the kind of person who's willing to roll your sleeves up and get in and, if you will, get dirty, then you're probably not going to have that element of that great adaptable authentic leadership.
We've talked about, so many things around like the shared vision and shared vision, humility, but being strong. And in the course of our conversations, I was beginning to see more and more. I believe how you're seeing it, because we all come with our own paradigms, where you're really like you have a vision to go after something, like you had a vision to start a business, and so you start your business, you bring people in, but then you're actually working to not just put them to work at tasks, but you're actually creating a relationship where they're actually participating in the vision. I mean, you call it shared vision, but I don't think it's just your vision. I think you're actually working within their imagination versus just tasking them to complete a task because you've got a deadline. I got to get this built, got to get it out the door.
Yeah. Now, the shared vision is as a leader, you have this vision of a what does Collins call it, a BHAG, a big audacious, big hairy audacious goal.
Right.
And if you sit around in a room with your key leaders, the people that are going to be able to make things happen, and you say you want to do X, and then kind of just shut up and listen and let them tell you how they think you're going to get to X, whatever
Right.
your happens to be. And then in that dialogue, and that's another element of the good leadership, is being able to communicate. And most of communication is learning to listen. During this dialogue, you end up developing a shared vision, one that everybody can get behind and say, yeah, that's what we need to do. We need to do this, and this becomes our pathway. And then you have everybody as a team working on that together, as opposed to a bunch of folks that are being directed to go accomplish X.
Right.
The lieutenant that says go capture that hill over there in battle, and then stands back and points, is not one that is a leader. That lieutenant that says we need to capture that hill over there. How do you guys think we're going to do it? And let's go do it together. And leads the charge and is the point of the spear. It's
Right.
a vastly different approach in leadership.
Right. I keep thinking about the idea, when I was first introduced to organizational management, 100 years ago. It seems like quite a while ago, and I remember like being intrigued with it, that really focusing on really leadership, the human element of business, and but I was also a little disillusioned at that time because I was seeing very competent managers and CEOs leveraging their knowledge to just get performance out of people. But I didn't see what we're talking about here, where there's actually connection, shared understanding, et cetera. It was just we just our shareholders have, they got to make money here, so we got to get the numbers up. And the focus goes from really the perform not the performance, but the connection of the team, the vision of the team, and valuing their input.
Well, typically what happens as you're in your career path is you begin to become efficient and effective at a particular set of tasks. And that's when you are, if you will, the worker. And then those people who are showing promise as the worker become technically competent, and the ones that people start to look to that are become the kind of the guidance counselor for the group suddenly get crowned
Right.
as supervisor. And now suddenly they're forced into a leadership position as opposed to where they might have been as peers leading people and helping their compatriots to go solve the particular problems of the day. Well, now as a supervisor, suddenly you have an option of putting on a different hat. And there's where much of management starts to fall down. Many times that hat tends to be, I'm now the boss, I
Right.
direct, you listen, and then they get some rewards for having accomplished the goal, and it reinforces more of that, what I consider to be negative behavior. And you get more of that driving force. And oh, by the way, they develop into becoming a control freak, and you got to do it my way, and I'm not listening to new ideas, and it just continues to go downhill. And you get an organization that is driven from the top and very little creativity and imagination on how you go solve problems. If you can incorporate at the same time that you're crowning that person as supervisor, this leadership mentality of being an adaptive and authentic leader, where you're leading them to support them as opposed to leading them to drive them, then you get a whole different kind of culture.
Right.
And I believe that culture is fairly rare in the world.
No, that's it. Yeah, that's interesting. And it's there's something that happens. I mean, like you're talking about this creating the culture. The leader defines the culture. So if the culture's not working, is the leadership not working?
The culture is a direct result of the leadership. And that leading by example is, in fact, instilling of the culture that you want in your people.
Right.
If you are leading by example and being a control freak, you're going to generate more control freaks below you. If you're leading
Mm,
by example, asking for assistance and developing people as you go along,
right.
say, how would this be better? How could we do this better? You're going to get more people to lead like you. And and we talked about when things go south, what happens when there's a mistake in the world and how you treat mistakes. Many times that directive leader will find someone to blame. That tends to be
Right.
the attitude. And rather than the authentic leader is saying, okay, that happened. Now what do we do about it? How do we make it better? How do we fix it so it doesn't happen again? And be the person who's looking to solve the problem in for the long term, rather than find somebody to blame, to ridicule, or to
Right.
fire, or whatever happens as a result of that.
I've worked in those businesses. I've seen leaders where I'm thinking, they don't even write about the things that you're doing right now because everybody knows you're not supposed to do it.
Yeah, but boy, does it happen a lot.
It
It really
it
does.
it really does, and I it makes me think about. I was kind of working on this one thought some time ago about, the human mind, the mind of people, can be so powerful and so liberated. But that very same mind and heart and soul can also be very boxed in and very controlled and managed. And I think about the level of um, mind power that your company has had with your old firm with Silicon Forest, the level of mind power, because people were free to think and didn't feel like they're going to have to contract. They're going to have to keep it close. I don't really want to share my ideas because nobody really cares anyways. after a while, we kind of quit having ideas. And so innovation breeds innovation. But if you're going to do control and you're going to do stress, the funny thing about stress is science tells us it makes us stupid. It shuts our mind down. And yet we lead in these cultures of stress. It's like, how's that good for your business?
Well, I have my own personal experience at Silicon Forest that really kind of maybe helps demonstrate a little bit of what we're talking about. As an entrepreneur, here I started the company as basically a greenfield startup, and bought equipment and found customers, and you're running 7 miles a minute, trying to make things happen and get things to happen. And there was a period of time we had grown to the point where we had, I think we had probably about 70 people there working for me, 60, 70, something like that. And I was trying to do everything inside the plant and trying to do everything outside the plant, and there just isn't enough time to do it all and do it effectively. And my team said, you need to let us go do our job. And it kind of was a wake-up call for me. And in fact, I didn't understand at the time what this authentic, adaptable leader,
Right.
was. It was in the process of developing that whole thought process. And they said, you got to let go. You can't do everything. And that was a hard thing for me to learn how to do, is to move from being the entrepreneur who controls and does everything
Right.
and makes it move, to one that allows the people to go do what's the right thing.
Right.
And so my people actually taught me to let things be and let them do their job. And over the last 10 years as their leader, I was able to have more opportunity to go out and impact and work directly with our customers and spend time doing
Oh, right.
the things that I was best at, and left the technical stuff to those that were best at doing the technical stuff. And it was all about trusting them to go do their job.
Right.
And that's the thing that you got to do. They trusted me to work for me. Now it was time for me to trust them, to let them do their job and get out of their way.
Right.
And that's sometimes a hard lesson to learn.
I'm reminiscing to a conversation we had when you were telling me about your negotiations with bears and how you negotiate. Now, you didn't use the term negotiate, but what I heard was you actually are negotiating with the bears when you go out and you meet them, and you're there to take photographs. You don't have a bow and arrow. You don't have a gun. You're there to take photographs, and they work with you. So why don't you talk to that about a little bit and tell us about the bears here?
Well, that and just to relate that back into leadership, it's all about communicating and listening to the bear, and the bear listening to you. And it's your same with your leadership abilities and your team. Is you got to learn to listen to your team, and they will listen to you as well. But in the case of the bears, you come upon a bear. The first thing you want to do when you're in the woods, you're walking along, you want the bear to know that you're there. There are no such things as surprises to a bear. A bear that gets surprised is probably going to become a deadly bear on your part. And so you really don't want to be surprising them. Once they know you're there, then, as you put it, negotiate. You negotiate that personal space that's required, that lets them go about, one, knowing they're safe, that I'm not carrying a gun and going to shoot them. So there's that initial, is this guy safe or is this guy going to shoot me, kind of quote discussion. And it's all done silently, obviously, but you build some level of trust between you and that bear. A black bear tends to not trust people, and his first reaction is to run. You can overcome that as well with a black bear. The brown bear And the grizzly, he's king of the beasts in that forest, and he's really not too afraid of too many things. So really going to leave you alone if you give him the space to go about his business. So there is some level of, as you put it, negotiation about what are the boundaries, how close can I come without it affecting your natural behaviors, and how far away must I stay? Obviously, I would like to get as close as possible to get the best possible a photograph. Now I'm using a lens that's weighs 15 pounds and that big around and that long, and that's provides me some distance and safety.
Right.
So those are all part of the language that you're learning between you and the bear, and he or she will tell you when you're starting to break down that barrier. You get too close, they may tend to move away, or they may tend to be watching you more. Typically, a bear will not even look at you if they're going about their business in a natural way because he knows where you are. Whether you think he knows where you are or not, he always knows where you are.
Right.
Uh, but so there's a language that happens, and it's all that body language that you have to learn to be able to read in the bear so that you are getting what you want. The other side of that coin is that I'm constantly talking to Mr. Bear or Mrs. Bear, as the case may be, just to let them know in a voice that's calm and serene and non-threatening, and that tonality of that discussion that we're having is helping them to continue on their business.
Right.
And that just happens naturally whenever I'm out there with the bears. I'm constantly talking to the bear in a way that is going to make them feel comfortable, as opposed to me being fearful. Me being fearful changes my tonality, and suddenly that may be considered a threat, and now you're getting into a problem with your bear.
Right.
So all those things of tonality and communicating and barriers and boundaries and all of those are can be translated back into leadership very easily in your team. We have barriers, we have boundaries, we have to learn to listen, we have to learn to speak softly, we have to be kind to the bear, not going to be a threat. All those things are part of what builds the trust that you have between you and the bear or you and your team.
Right.
Right.
And it's like I can see this both ways, where a leader can be a bear, but I can also see where the employee, the team member, can be a bear, and where the
You
and
get those every once in a while.
right, right, and I think about like going back to what you said about the leader sets the culture, and that's such a critical thing to keep in mind, because you were you were leading. When you're walking in there, they're just minding their own business, and you come in, and all of a sudden, they've got Frank over there with this camera, and they're trying to know what to do with you, and if they need to move away. I mean, they're processing, of course. Well, do we want our employees to move away? Do we want our employees to keep secrets? I don't like secrets. I don't think leaders like secrets in general. And when if there's a problem, and it finally shows up at the leader's door, in the manager's door, and they could have not had the serious problem they're having today if they would have known about it 6 weeks ago. How's that leader going to respond? That surprise. It's like coming down the trail and you're not making yourself known. You're not whistling. You're not singing. You're not talking when you're in bear country. And all of a sudden you walk in a leader's office, and that leader is going to be surprised. That's not going to go well, typically, but a leader has an option still.
Yeah, they do. And it's about culture and knowing that it's okay to say, I feel uncomfortable about X, and know
Mhm.
that whenever you say those words, it's not going to be taken incorrectly, but okay, you feel uncomfortable about X. How can I help you be more comfortable with whatever X is happening? And that's one way to respond, as opposed to, well, you shouldn't have let that happen, and flying off the handle, and sometimes worrying about a problem that really isn't a problem and causing all sorts of consternation. And that's typically what happens, is we get involved with trying to fix something that doesn't need to be fixed, when in fact,
Mm,
uh, the UPS driver finally shows up with the part that you were missing, and there was really not a problem at all.
right.
Uh, so it's all in how the leader treats the people during the conflict that will help them to build the trust that allows them to bring that information in earlier, so there isn't a surprise.
Well, and you mentioned earlier about the leader, coming in saying, "This is where we're going. How do we get there? What are your thoughts?" And just stepping back and being the last one to have an opinion about the how.
Right.
And I maybe you could speak to that a little bit about how when you actually do that, there's a giving away of ownership. There's a group dynamic that's very fascinating, where all of a sudden it's not your project, it's our project. And as that happens, when problems arise or difficulties, I would think it's pretty simple for those team members to say, "Hey, this is going on. It took a U-turn instead of a right turn. And so what do we do here?" And and so I would think that you're building a camaraderie right out of the gate when you're walking in that kind of a culture and attitude.
Well, and it really does, and it's not about just leader follower. It's leader and team, and that's what it does, is builds a team relationship, and the team can go solve the problem without the leader. Very seldom does the leader have to be involved with the actual discussion and the answer. Rarely does it require the decision of the manager, unless it amounts to spending a significant amount of money. um, then the team can go solve the problem. In my case, and what I did, and have done throughout, is team is important to me. That each of us bring to the party, even though I may be engineering and you may be production. The production guy knows a whole lot about engineering, and the engineering guy knows a whole lot about production. And between the two of them, they can come up with a better mousetrap than they currently have in hand. Any one of them alone, it's the old one plus one is greater than the sum of its parts.
Right.
Right. So team is really important, and especially if you're going to extract somebody from that team, and they're going to, oh, guess what, they get to take a vacation. What happens when they take a vacation? They're no longer around or not available. All the same problems and things are going to continue to go along with the remaining team, and they have to learn to be able to solve them among themselves, and they do that by relying on each other. So it's teamwork is what's key.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to think that leadership can flow in a way that you're inspired and you're not feeling like you're alone in it. I hear, it's lonely at the top. And it's like there is a certain amount of isolation when you're shouldering a business. But as a leader, I think I think the thing I'm thinking about is we have to be willing to change. It's like we pray for an answer and the answer comes. It's like, now you got to change. Because especially obviously we want our companies to grow. And it's like, well, if I go from a one-man shop, to a five-man shop, man or woman shop, if I'm growing and my staff is increasing, I have to change. Am I? Am I up to that challenge?
Well, it's very definite change. It's change as you grow, and it's just change as situations change.
Right.
There are times in where we had essentially the same crew, but the environment that we're in went from being a growth environment to a recession. Well, in that period of time, things have to change in how you sell. Things have to change in how you manage your inventory. Things have to change, and you have to be able to be adaptable in that whole
Right.
process. And if you're not, if you only have one way of doing it, you're going to drive it right off the end of the pier. Eventually, you're not going to see the end of that pier coming.
Right.
And yeah, change is really, and being able to not just manage change, but be a part of the change. To me, it really is about a learning mindset. Change comes from wanting to do it better. How do I learn to do whatever it is better? Is learn more about it.
Right.
And learning creates the opportunity for being adaptable and
Mm.
change and doing things differently.
That's
Can't always do it the same way. Well, we've always done it that way is not a good answer.
well, I think that's what's been interesting in our conversations is that I know that you're always picking up a book, and when you're picking up a book, you're really saying, I want to be mentored in this. And yeah, right. And I know that's not all of them by far, by any stretch. And so it's like, and I was thinking about that, about how, there's really a mentorship that we each need to be in. And then as we actually go walk it out, because there's a lot of good authors have studied a lot of remarkable people. And so you're really learning not from that author as much as because they are doing a masterful job of bringing information together, but you're learning from those other subjects, their folks, the people. I mean, you started off with Tom Peters, for goodness sakes, So it's like, you're always in a place of mentorship, and then as a leader, you're being mentored, and then you're creating a culture of team members that are reaching for mentorship, and you get to be a mentor by example, but then they're also becoming mentors. And I know people that have worked with you, and they are wonderful mentors.
Yeah, again, that's the culture. And if you are a mentor, you generate mentors, and that's the culture you create. It doesn't happen overnight, but it happens by that magic leading by example.
Right.
People see you doing and acting a certain way, they're going to say, that must be the way we should be acting. Therefore, that's what I'll try to do. They'll probably do it different. And you know what? That's okay.
Right.
But the concepts of doing things in a way that doing the right thing or doing things by communicating or not holding secrets. Our company was extraordinarily open as a company. Uh, the entire operations were available for everybody to view online. You wanted to know where we were, profit and loss. All you had to do is to open up the computer and look. There were no secrets. The only secrets we had were the things that we had to keep, people's social security numbers, their pay, and that kind of nonsense. There's legal requirements, but everything else was available for everybody to know. So there was no surprises. Nobody would get surprised on a Friday afternoon with a pink slip because everybody already knew what the condition of the company was.
Right.
There was no surprises. We did have to go through some layoffs during some recessions, but there was everybody could see it coming. There was no surprise. So surprises go both ways. You don't surprise management, but management doesn't surprise the people. There and again, that's all part of the culture.
Right. Well, Frank, we're coming down to the end of our hour, but I wanted to kind of shift a little bit and talk about all these various aspects, and you've shown it to me in a graphic. And but why don't we talk just a few minutes and give you a chance to look at that graphic and then just talk about it and talk to it, and about you've got Awana, you've got the people, you got shared vision, lead by example, et cetera, et cetera. So why don't you speak to that for a few minutes and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, yeah, and the key, to me, the entry point to leadership is you got to want it. If you don't accept that as being key to your passion and what you need to be doing, then the rest of it isn't going to happen. Being communicative, and you communicate both verbally, you communicate physically, and you communicate by leading by example. Those are ways in which you start to create the culture of your leadership in your organization. And you can be in a small department or you can be the CEO. It doesn't matter where you're going. You can have a culture of leadership that happens at the department level or at the floor level with the supervisor. So the depth of where you begin your leadership journey doesn't have to be in the CEO, the corner office. Using your imagination and being creative, and that shared vision comes from the communication of having open discussions about what are options, what are opportunities to change, and using that creativity and imagination to find a better way to build your mousetrap. Key to it all is a bias for action. Something I talk about a bias for action. The key, I wrote this a long time ago to my granddaughter, and I said the key to success is your ability to take a step forward, to take an action wherever you're going, whatever you do, you have a goal. And if you take a step, that step will tell you something. You evaluate that step. Well, that didn't get me any closer to my goal at all. It went the wrong direction. That's valuable information. Just
Right.
because you're a failure doesn't mean that was I ought to give up. That just means that's a way I shouldn't go to get to where I want to
Right.
be. So continuing that step process and always being taking an action is really important. The positive attitudes, the mindset, the learning mindset, and being able to embrace failure and what you do about it is what counts. All of those things are the pieces that bring together to the one magic thing called the people and the trust that the people that you build with the people. And it's all about leadership is all about trust.
Mm.
Trust. Your customers trust you because you're a leader in your field. You lead with them. Your team trusts you because you lead for them. You mentor them. It's all about trust.
That's remarkable, Frank. We're going to have a lot of great conversations coming up here, which I'm looking forward to. And I think we have an opportunity to share some more bear stories, some more
Oh,
use
I've
cases.
got all kinds of bear stories, and I really enjoyed having the opportunity to, put the word out, if you will.
Get the word out. You bet. Well, thank you everybody for spending the time with us, and we have more to come. And this is just the beginning of many sessions with Frank Nichols, the man who sleeps with bears.